And I'm now calling Professor Wan. So in this segment, we will be, we've created 3 angles to look at proximity. And the first one is around how it's been interesting to look at it through the voices of and the lenses of other disciplines. And our first speaker here is Professor Wan. I just found out this morning he's an architect by education, but he's actually associate professor in urban planning and development and at Cambridge University. So actually your slides are here, so it's easier. Oh, no, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Catherine. I'll just cut to the chase given the time constraint. I want to set the tone first. I think the success that we witnessed yesterday of this 15 minutes or X minute city model is unprecedented in the history of city planning. Why I said so? Because as a planner and also a planning educator, I cannot think of any other concept or model, whatever you call it, has ever reached this level of global acceptance and popularity within such a short period of time. 3 years to be precise. And I think you are all very impressed by the very enthusiastic endorsement that from very high level stakeholders and international organizations. However, as a planning educator, I have to ask the question that why such success? What is so special, magical about this X-mini city model? Because that's the question that I have to answer to my students, to the future planners. I will leave Carlos and Catherine to answer the question, what is 15-minute city model? But I need to question why it is so successful as a phenomenon. So I would like to share some of my thoughts in progress with you today. So my tentative answer to this question, why the 15-minute city model is so popular, is this. Because I believe the urban proximity model is a boundary object. So what is a boundary object? It's quite self-explanatory, right? It's an object sits on the boundary of 2 or more distinct domains, concepts, disciplines. I'll give you some examples to show why this particular conceptualization of the 15 cities model can help to explain the success of it. So the first example, I think this X-minus model or the urban proximity model facilitates the integration of city and transport planning. Two very big fields. In transport planning, time is a very important concept. Yeah? It's probably one of the most important measurements of transport cost. However, we don't use time a lot in the fields of land use planning. We hardly use it at all. So the 15-minute city model is the first that uses this time measurement as a clear measure of success to inform land use planning. And there are some associated benefits of using this particular measurement, I believe. First is the neutrality. It's a neutral concept. It's not about bad or wrong, it's neutral. Yeah? So it's very different from other concepts like smart city, like compact city. You can always find an opposite to it. And second is the objectivity of this concept. Because when you measure the travel time, when you measure the accessibility, it's a reasonably objective measurement. This is different from measurement of happiness, quality of life. So it's very hard to challenge if you have a specific measurement of travel time. And the last thing, again, associated with this use of time measurement is because it's a universal measurement. Yeah? This universality of this measurement make this concept, this 15-minute city model, all-encompassing. Whatever you do, whatever you measure, you can make a connection with it. I think you all have seen that from this variety of applications of this model across the globe yesterday. So that's a quite innovation, yeah, to use the time measurement to inform land use planning, hence achieving the goal of integrating these two disciplines and professions. The second example I can give you, again, elaborating the magic of this concept, is to achieve this very rare union of planners and economists. I think Pete made a very insightful presentation yesterday, and we also saw the presentation from Paul Krugman. I think it's extraordinary that Carlos and Catherine have done this groundbreaking work to create a concept that is endorsed by both planners and economists. Trust me, I teach in the Department of Land Economy. I'm surrounded by economists. I know how hard it is to work with economists. It's not because they're bad people. It's because they understand the behavior of people. They understand the darkest part of people and apply that to how they communicate with other economists and other professionals. However, I think if we talk about city planning, it is vital that we establish this link and the mutual respect between planners and economists. We are not enemies. We are not enemies. And for that, I think they have demonstrated how to achieve this harmony between these two professionals. And how did they do that? I think when we talk about proximity, it usually requires or implies density. I think the colleagues from Cardiff mentioned about the use of density. And it happens that density is also a very important enabler for the agglomeration economies. So on that front, the economists can't really reject this idea. However, there's a slight divergence. Yeah? There's a slight divergence because when the economists talk about density, they're talking about the economic benefits. Yeah, they're talking about externalities, talking about the productivity gains. This is something that I think the urban proximity model can do perhaps a bit more, which I will elaborate very shortly. The last example I want to show you, this is beyond the field of planning. This is beyond interdisciplinarity. This is actually across different stakeholder groups. This is a very rare reunion of planners and politicians. I mean, in most of the European countries, you probably think that this alliance between planners and politicians quite common, natural. But I would argue that please don't take this for granted. I come from England, where planners and the politicians somehow are arch enemies. And politicians blame the planning system and implicitly the planners for all sorts of societal problems, ranging from housing crisis, regional inequalities, and the productivity puzzle. So in England, politicians don't like planners, despite the planning being a very, very important government apparatus for their own purposes. So the harmony, the alliance I observe here is quite impressive. I wish that back in England we can imitate this. But again, how do you achieve this? How do you achieve this? I think, like the mayor said yesterday, planning is essentially political. So if you want to work out a planning concept, you have to understand politics, and you have to be willing to participate in the politics. You have to anticipate how the politicians would perceive this concept, how this would serve their own agenda, but also how they perceive the risk of taking up this model. I mentioned about using this time measurement as the name or the guiding principle for this model. Because of the neutrality, because of the objectivity, because of the universality of the measurement, the urban proximity model renders to be a very, very low risk option for politicians. So I think as planners, we need to understand this risk aversion nature of some politicians. I understand the others might be more risk-taking. But again, this shows that the planners need to think beyond their own professional disciplines, not only the technicality of the model, but understand perhaps the psychology of the politicians. And once you can achieve this alliance, you can create this magic. I understand I only have 6 minutes, so this is my last slide. Yeah, this is my last slide. So all these thoughts are tentative, very early stage, and for discussion. But I do prompt you to think about beyond the technical definition of the X-minute city model and think about why it is so successful. I think that is profoundly important for us to think about the future of planning and how we educate the future planners. 2 further thoughts. Yeah, this might be useful extensions for the future. So far, when we talk about the model, we mainly perceive the benefits, the impact from the perspective of residents. But economists would argue that the city is more than the place of residence, but also the place of production. Of course, we have seen evidence, though limited, from cities like Copenhagen in terms of how pedestrianization can help the local businesses. But I think we do need to think more about what kind of instrument, economical mechanisms that can be enabled from the 15-minute city model that can help producers. For example, how a shop owner, a coffee shop owner, can benefit from proximity, how they can help them to better source labor, raw material, and how to help them to access their customers. I think if we shift the focus from this residence space to a workplace space, then we probably can further amplify this particular model. I'm not saying that the 15-minute city model or the urban proximity model has to do this, but I think we shouldn't leave it uninvestigated. We need to look into that. Even though we couldn't find any causal effects, I think it is a worthwhile scientific query. And lastly, so what is this 15 minutes model? It's an evolving concept. I had this conversation with Catherine this morning. I understand it's an evolving concept, and it evolves very, very quickly, which is such a merit. Yeah, I think Carlos and Catherine should take the credit for it. Within 3 years, this is a fast evolving concept. But what really impressed me is that it is not a dogmatic solution, and we should be very. If some people say this is a solution to any of the societal challenges, it is not a solution in my shallow view. It is a cooperative framework. Yeah? It enables people to work together, people from very different backgrounds to work together. And essentially that solution, if there is any, comes from the intelligence of people working under this framework. And I salute Carlos and Catherine and Paris for creating and broadcasting this framework. Thank you.